Hello, Facebook Live. Marcus here from Aroma Thyme in Ellenville, and we're going to talk about French. We're going to talk about how to make the best cup of coffee. As you can probably see, the steam coming up right here. Talk about making the best cup of coffee and how we make coffee here at Aroma Thyme. We've been doing this, for probably a decade. We've been making coffee in this manner, and this is probably the best and one of the easiest ways to make coffee, especially for home. And what I'm going to talk about now, these make great gifts for anybody who loves coffee. I'm not going to talk about selecting coffee beans or roasts or things like that too much in this video, but I'm going to actually talk about the actual steeping part of the grinds. Of course, the best cup of coffee to you is what you like, so don't get caught up in the type of roast and things like that. So, and what I'm going to talk about now does take some experimenting, because you can break the rules, or there are no really set in stone rules on how to make this type of coffee. So the coffee that we make in Aroma Thyme, or the style that we make, is a French press. A French press is a way to use loose grounds, and I have some coffee in here. You can see some grounds in there. See that? They're in there. A French press is a way to make a fresh cup of coffee or pot of coffee, because these French presses come in many different sizes and different styles. This is an insulated French press, so it is like an air pocket insulated, and this will make a good amount of coffee in there. And again, stuff like this makes great holiday gifts, folks. Especially the coffee lover. So let's talk about the process of the French press. So the French press is designed to put loose grinds in. There's no filter. There is a screen here that makes sure no grinds get into your coffee. Hot water. Now, the idea behind this is the most ideal temperature to brew coffee in is 200 degrees. So the disadvantage to using a drip over, like a filter, is that there's several disadvantages to that, and we'll talk about those. So 200 degrees, this just came out of our machine that's set for 200 degrees. And the most ideal time to steep this is 4 minutes. So here's a 4-minute timer. And so now in this French press, all the grinds are dispersed evenly, okay? Which is key, because in your drip machine, they don't get dispersed evenly. You have things sitting in a filter, and then water drips over and pours through it. So the advantage to this is all the grinds have contact with the coffee. In a drip over, it just drips over, it extracts it, and that's it. There's no other contact time. Now, a lot of people say to actually stir the coffee here. Now, this is up to you. This is where you can tweak this. A lot of people say take this plunger and stir it vigorously and get all the grinds moving, which means more surface contact with the water, with the hot water to extract. Now, if you want more of a robust cup of coffee, that's what you would exactly do. But if you want something, well, again, this is all experimenting, folks. If you're grinding coffee fresh, the size of the grinds makes a difference on the extraction. So the first thing that makes the French press really cool is that all the grinds, again, like I said, get contact with the water. You can actually stir it if you'd like to make something more robust and plunge up and down. 4 minutes is the ideal. 200 degrees is the ideal temperature. Now, if you're doing this at home, you take a pot of water. If you don't have to have a thermometer. You don't have to make this super exact. You can take a pot of water, put it on the stove, bring it to a boil. Now, this makes a difference where you're at as far as altitude. If you're in a high altitude area like Colorado and you're at, let's just say 10,000 feet. Water boils at like 190 degrees at 10,000 feet. So you're not going to get it up to 200, but you're going to take that boiling water and throw it in there. At a mile high, I think water boils at like 212, 204, if I remember when we lived in Colorado. So, but 212, if you bring your water to a boil and then turn it off and literally wait 30 seconds to 1 minute, you probably have pretty perfect water temperature to do that. Now, in a drip over machine, the water typically never can get that hot. It might get maybe 170, 180, but it never really gets to that boil and backs down to that 200 degree mark. So the extraction is much less in a drip over coffee. So now as this thing is sitting here, the grinds are in here, they're dispersed evenly. There's lots and lots of water contact, good extraction. Again, if you want it more robust, you can plunge it. If you want it more robust, you can do it. You can play with the timer, a 3-minute timer, a 4-minute timer, a 5-minute timer. You kind of have to figure out what coffee you like, what coffee that you actually like, and the grind that you like, and the blend and things like that. One of the other disadvantages to using a drip over, one with a filter, is that the filter acts like a sponge. And coffee does have some trace oils, trace fats, trace oils in it that do add great flavor. So if you use a filter, your first pour over, when that water hits the grinds and it starts leaching out, and that filter acts like a sponge and can trap some of those oils that then make the coffee less robust. Now, for me, being a restaurant owner and understanding that coffee is a relatively inexpensive item to serve, it's a high profit margin item that, and by the way, these things do cost like $20 and we break them all the time, and that kind of a bummer. But I judge a restaurant by how well their coffee program is. I look at the coffee machine, I look at the espresso machine, because when I walk into a place, if they're taking care, if they're going the extra step to make sure that the coffee's fantastic and they're doing things that are above and beyond, if they have a beautiful espresso machine, I know that restaurant is now taking care to and some of the smaller details. And we all know that I'm not particularly a coffee drinker. I do drink espresso from time to time, but there's nothing more disappointing than when I order an espresso and it's just bland, there's not enough flavor in it, it's not robust enough, and it's just like, and that happens quite frequently because espresso machines need to be calibrated constantly and making sure that things, and even the grinder needs to make sure that it's calibrated and that enough grinds are going into the actual espresso machine. All that kind of changes, and so of course things change with humidity. Humidity makes the beans swell up, and there's different grinds. So all this has to be taken into consideration. So here we go. So now this has been, I think, about 4 minutes. Here I kind of lost track. You push this down ever so gently. You push this down in the French press. And there you go, folks. You can start pouring. You can actually start pouring coffee. So that is the way to make a great pot of coffee, is again the French press. Everybody, thank you for tuning in on Facebook Live. I appreciate it. Just did a quick rundown on French press coffee and why it is a superior way to make coffee. This is, by the way, how we make coffee here at Aroma Thyme. If you are a coffee lover, drop a comment or tag somebody who is a coffee lover. And again, these things are about $20. Sometimes you can go into like TJ Maxx or Marshall's and they'll be there for like $9, $10. And sometimes they'll have different cool ones like this for $20 or $30. If you are a coffee drinker, just grab these, experiment. The benefits are immense with making French press coffee. And again, I'll just do a quick rundown if you're tuning into this late. French press coffee is superior because you have more water contact with the grinds. So the grinds hit the water and stay in the water and seep, as opposed to a drip over that they just drip through the filter. The next thing is you can actually control the water temperature much better to get a better extraction. 200 degrees is ideal. 4 minutes is ideal or optimal. But again, you need to experiment with 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and kind of see where you're at and what kind of coffee you like. The advantage to doing this as well, you can also plunge this plunger, which mixes the coffee up and stirs it vigorously. Some people swear by that, and that adds more of a robust flavor. And the last big benefit is that the very trace oil, the small amounts of oil that are in the beans, get trapped a lot of times in the filter, though that white or brown filter acts like a sponge, and that initial pour over the water traps those oils into that, and the oils never actually make it into your coffee, which then means it's lacking flavor. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Have a great holiday season, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks.